Hey guys, welcome to this new tutorial. Today, we'll be making some Superhot in Fortnite. This is possible due to a couple of things, due to the cinematic sequence and the different controls that Epic gave us. And it's going to be really cool, and let me show you how we do it. Alright, to get started here, we're going to need a couple of things. First, let's just say we need to spawn somewhere. That would make sense. So go to the Fortnite folder, and then we're going to pull up creative devices, or just devices. And in here, there's going to be a player spawner, and which we can place down. This is just going to make it so we don't have to fly down from the sky whenever we start the game. Next, we're going to need something called a cinematic sequence device. This is what's going to hold our cinematic sequence, or basically our slow motion effect. So the reason that this is possible is because it allows you to use a sequence. A sequence is basically a set of actions for some set of objects to do, specifically over time to make an animation. So you can rotate or transform these different objects to recreate some sort of animation. For our purpose, though, it does allow us to do something called a time dilation, and I'll show you where that is in a second. Go ahead and click on the none on the right here, the drop down, and click on level sequence. This is going to create our level sequence. Let's just go out, call it slow motion sequence. It's going to show up in our project folder under slow motion sequence right here. We're going to be able to apply that to here, and if you did it through the drop down, it's going to already be there. Now we need to edit this. So go ahead and double click it to open the sequencer. Now that we have the sequencer, we can add to the track, time dilation track, and then this number right here allows us to change how much time is dilated. So go ahead and put it something low, whatever you would like. 0.2 would work fine for this example. I think that works fine. Go ahead and hit this little save sequence button here in the top left. I couldn't get Control S to work, so I would just click the button, and then we are good to go. All we need to do is add autoplay. Well, actually, that's kind of optional. However, I would recommend turning it on just so you can test to make sure it works. Turn on loop playback, so it repeats after the tiny amount of time you've given it, the 150 frames that it happens over, and then make it so it's only in progress that it's active. That way you're not in the warm-up or the starting screen and it takes much too long. With that, we're pretty much done. If you'd like, you can feel free to add something like a sentry or a enemy spawner just so you can test it. I'm just going to show the effect with like swapping items and placing builds, but whatever you want to do with your code is up to you. I'll have a Reddit post below that had the idea to do this, so you could just get an idea of what's possible. All right, now we got to make the file for our code to interact with, or just to be in the first place. So go ahead and open Verse Explorer, and then on your project, go ahead and hit Add New Verse Device. We're going to call this slow motion device and create. All right, now that we're in Visual Studio, we can start doing the fun part of this. So what do we actually need this code to do? So I think first we got to understand what are the rules of Superhot. It's pretty simple. If you are moving, no slow-mo. And if you are not moving, slow-mo. Pretty simple. So how do we do this? Well, if we get a reference to the player, we'd be able to check between two frames. Are you moving this frame? Are you moving, or check if the position of two frames are different. So we would check position over time, which is also a velocity, basically how much you change over a period of time. However, there's no velocity methods that you can use on the player to get this, so we are going to have to calculate this ourselves. We're not going to actually find velocity, just how much you've changed and if that's within a threshold, which is the next thing we need. We're going to need some amount of threshold. Or I just called this tolerance in my code when I did this first. So some sort of tolerance for how much you're allowed to move before the slow-mo turns off. And then finally, we need how many times do we check per second for this condition. For me, I found that 10 times per second was pretty good. However, if you want to do more, the tick speed of the server is 30, either average or just fixed. I don't know specifically. But that is what I would recommend as a maximum for this. And let's just go ahead and do this. So, and well, one other thing we'll need, and this is kind of self-explanatory, is the sequence device, something we can say play and stop on. So let's go ahead and get those. Using the editable tag or attribute, we are able to give our variables the ability to be added through the Unreal Engine interface. What that means, I can show you in a second here. Let's go ahead and call this slow motion sequence, and it's going to be a type of cinematic sequence. Oh, something's spelled wrong. Cinematic sequence device, and we're going to call the empty constructor for that, and that's going to get rid of these errors here. Oh, make sure you put an equal sign there. That's going to help. Now that we've done that, all the errors go away and we're all good. And let me just show you what that does for us real quick. I'm going to go back into Unreal Engine here. There we go. And I'm going to compile our code by pressing Control-Shift-B. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and add our creative device here. If you want to get rid of it, you can always delete the mesh right here. But now if we look under slow motion device, we actually have this dropdown. And from here, we are able to add the cinematic sequence device. This was going to allow us to do dot play, dot stop on it. All right, we're going to do something similar with our tick speed. And that's just what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it tick speed, which is going to be a float here. And real quick, I'll just show you how you would calculate how many things you want per second. So let's say, for example, I'm going with 10. This represents 1 second divided by the amount of times you want it to happen, which is equal to frequency, basically how often something happens within a given period of time. This is just going to be some low decimal value that represents how many seconds between ticks. In this case, it's just going to be 0.1. But if you want to do 0.3 here, or I guess that would be 0.0333, then you absolutely can. I just feel it feels better this way. And then finally, we want a tolerance, which is similarly going to be a float. If I can spell today. Tolerance. It's going to be a float, and it's kind of arbitrary. The faster you check, the lower you want your tolerance to be. So I'm just going to make it whatever, like like 1.0. It's arbitrary, and I encourage you to play test and try these different things to see what feels good. Anyway, we can get all this placeholder text out of the way, and we can get started. And then real quick, before I forget, let's go ahead and put all of our using statements up top here. And I'm going to go ahead and put a link down below to the finalized code so you can copy specifically these statements, but any other pieces that you need, or if you just want to skip the video entirely, go ahead. All right, now that we have that, we can actually get started. So what do we need to be able to check? Is the player moving enough? Well, this is where the docs are helpful, but not quite, how shall we say, the best. I'm going to try to walk you through it, and my process of how I figured this out. However, it is a bit of a time commitment to try to figure out what's going on. I'm hoping eventually we'll have better docs, or even better, you can understand this stuff from tutorials like this. So to begin, we need to get the play space, and that is simply going to be the game itself. This is of type Fort play space, and it's equal to get play space function, which is given by devices from the creative object interface to be able to check where I am, and then it also has a attribute, or I guess it would be, yeah, it's a attribute or a variable of all the players. So let's just go ahead and grab that. So this is a list of players, or specifically an array. I want to be specific here, but not, overly stringent. And we can just do this by taking our place that we just got and putting it and calling .getPlayers. That's simple, makes sense. And then if you ever need to look at the VS Code and be like, wait, why is any of this happening? Like, where does this stuff come from? It helps if you hold control. It'll tell you where these different things are from. For example, if I do it over here, it tells me, oh, it's from play spaces for play space. Play space is just being the, I guess, module. So you can kind of just tell here that, all right, cool, that's cool. And I just did that by holding control and clicking. That was all I did. And all of that was descriptions of what all this stuff is and where it came from. And it can be helpful to understand kind of where I'm going with this. Now that we have these player objects, they're from simulation. We can't just say, player.getLocation. That would be too easy. No. What we've got to do is grab it. So what we are going to do is we're going to do if, and we're going to do player. For my example, I'm going to assume that there's a singular player, and it is you. This code can absolutely be modified. I'm not sure how you would do it, but that is up to you to figure out and for me to enjoy playing later on the creative space. We're going to say it's equal to player at 0, or players at 0. And specifically, this is an if statement because when you're accessing an array, it is a failable expression, which means it needs to be in a failable context. Besides that, now that we have this player object, we are able to actually get the Fort character, which I know a lot of steps here, but we're almost done. Is this the right notation? Yes, it is. All right. So we get the Fort character here, and we can set that equal to player.get, or what was it? .get Fort character. And it is square brackets, not parentheses like it's a method. Don't ask me why. I didn't program this. I'm still figuring out some of this stuff. But other than that, we've got everything. And if this is disgusting and unreadable for you, go ahead and put this on its own line over here. That may help you understand it. I think the way I would do it is like this. This helps me understand it the best. All right. Other than that, let's go ahead and create our variable for last position. So we're doing what we said before. Locate the last position and then check to the new position after a frame or after a server tick has passed. So last position is going to be a type of vector3. And that's going to be equal to, well, let's make life a little more efficient. Let's go ahead and get the transform. I'm just going to say transform. It's probably a better name to do player transform, just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's going to be a type of transform here. And it's going to be equal to Fort character dot get transform. Nice and easy. Now that we have that, we can do player transform dot, and this is where things is interesting. It's dot translation, and this is a property, not a method. Translation just meaning a change in based on the origin or based on a parent. It's similar to position, not maybe exactly, but it's close enough and it's good enough for our purposes. It's a vector 3. It's got an XYZ component. That's what we need. Next, what we can do is check, or that's it. That's it for this. Now we can actually go into the loop that controls the things. So what is a loop? I'm always getting these suggestions that don't help. What is a loop? Well, in other languages, we have something called a while loop, where you execute until a condition is met. We don't have a while loop. We have for loops, and we have a loop. These loops, all they require is that it's either asynchronous, as in it happens over multiple frames, or that it has a break somewhere in there. That's kind of it. And then if you want it to act like a while loop, then just do if condition or if not condition break. Otherwise, we're going to use the other definition or other use of a loop, and we're going to make it a asynchronous over time. So we're going to have this guy go to bed, go to sleep over our tick speed. And it'd probably be a better name to be tick delay, but you live and let die. Now that we have this, we can go ahead and take a look at the new position. So we're going to make a new constant. And by the way, var needs to be right here because we are going to update last position. Anyway, new position is going to be a vector 3 as well, and it's going to be equal to the exact same thing as right here. Take the transform and then get the translation at that moment of time. Now that we have that, we are able to compare. So let's go ahead and get distance changed, or distance traveled would be a good name as well. And this is going to be a float, not a vector 3. Now, to check how much distance you've gone, you subtract the distance of one by the distance of the other. Now, in theory, it would be biggest minus smallest. However, since we don't know which one is going to be bigger or more positive, and different directions may change between positive and negative, the best way to do this is just using the absolute value function and then doing last position dot length, or dot, I think it's dot length, minus new position dot length. And it is a method, not a property. That's just a helper method for vector 3s from spatial math. Absolute value is from just verse.org as one of the functions that is given to you. All right, now we have that. If the distance changed is greater than our tolerance, then I think we know what to do. So let's write that line real quick. If distance changed is greater than the tolerance, then very simply, we know we are moving, which means we need to stop the slow motion. So we're going to do, oh, I've hit insert or something. No, I think it's fine. We're going to take our slow motion sequence right here, and we are going to dot stop it. I did fiddle with it. You cannot do dot pause, and that's because if you pause it, you're freezing the animation, but the animation still contains a slow motion at that frame, which is a little weird, I know, but that's just how it is. You have to do dot stop and not dot pause. Otherwise, if this condition isn't true, that means we haven't moved, and we can do slow motion sequence dot play. As in, if it's not playing already, start it. And believe it or not, we're just done, provided I haven't made some horrible, egregious error. Oh, one more thing. Now that we've done this little bit, we can update what our last position was, doing set last position. We'll set it equal to the new position that it was, and then bada bing, bada boom. Now, I probably should have said this before, but I recommend doing testing more than I have here, and that's simply because it's going to help you understand better, and then if something goes catastrophically wrong, you'll have backups. I don't really need to because I have the code in front of me, but just be careful of that and then pay attention if need be. All right, let's head back to our Unreal Engine and then compile. You can, again, hit Control-Shift-B. I'm just going to press it right here in the verse compile, and bada bing, bada boom. I'm going to launch the session, save all the changes that have been made, and then I'll be back once we're able to test it. All right, I'm back. Let's go ahead and give this a shot and see if we did everything right. I'm going to go ahead and start the game. We're going to have our 3, 2, 1. And you can see we're moving slowly. Alright, looks like I might have done something wrong. Maybe just a little bit. But you can see that the slow motion part works, and it's quite possible that the only problem is that I have the number too low with how slow I'm moving. I'm going to change the game speed, and then I'm going to do a test to see, did I do something wrong? And I'll be right back. Alright, I just found the problem. For whatever reason, the player transform is tied to the data that it was asked for, like that frame, which is a little weird. Basically, you need to get the transform every check. I think that's silly, but I guess that's just how it is. So instead of, well, really you can just add a new line. Just make sure this is a variable now, and then set the player transform here. Again, if something went wrong, I have the code down below. I highly recommend trying to understand what it does, or at minimum, typing it out instead of just Control-C, Control-V. But it's all up to you. It's all public. It's for everyone to use. I really don't care. Credit me if you want to, though. Let's go ahead and pop into game and do my little outro. All right, I'm starting the game here. You can kind of tell it's a slow-mo. I kept a print line, but you can kind of see how it's acting. So you can definitely see with my little dance here that it's certainly slow motion. But then as soon as I move, there we go. We're speeding up. Now, I do wish there was a way to check, is the player holding WASD or not, or just like movement direction. However, there's not. It would make things much simpler and a lot cleaner, but it's how it is. And then a second unfortunate is that weapon projectiles do not move slower, as if they are slowed down, and that's simply because they just travel instantly. And if they don't, like a sniper, they simply travel much too fast. To circumvent this, it would be best to make a custom projectile, and maybe I will do that in a future video. But anyway, if you liked what you saw, then perfect. Let me know. Give me a like. Ask me in the description what you would like to know. I would greatly appreciate what I need to work on. And other than that, see you guys later. Keep programming. Bye.